Are we
It
live?
claims this meeting's being live streamed. I
It
didn't consent to
does.
that.
Amazing.
How dare
Well,
you?
if we're live, that's fantastic. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. We're back again for another season of Queer Confab. I'm your host, Zoe Frieslick, and today we're going to be talking all about sexualities. What
Woo.
are sexualities? Are they fluid? What are misconceptions of them that we could address tonight? Any questions that you have tonight, please feel free to pop them into the comments on YouTube. I will be checking periodically to answer them. But first, we're going to introduce our guests. So, Leo, if you want to go first, tell us a little bit about yourself
Sure thing.
and let us know what is your sexual identity.
Will do. My name is Leah. My pronouns are he, him. I identify as a heterosexual man, heterosexual trans man to be specific. Yeah, and I work in theatre and film here in London.
Mason, Doug.
Sick. Hey, I'm Doug. He, him. Cisgender bisexual man, and I am unofficially the sexiest bartender in Glasgow. Don't ask anyone else where I got those numbers. They're not made up.
Have they not been made official yet? I thought you'd officially received the title from the city, no?
I keep sending them letters, like
Oh, jeez, mate.
Yeah, you can keep trying, Doug. I'm sure you'll get there soon. Well, I am, as I said, Zoe, I am a cisgendered female. I go by she, her, and I am, in the last couple of years, newly realized pansexual. Turns out, because I thought I could fuck a woman, it means I'm not actually straight.
fair.
And that's how I found out. But we'll get into that story later. So first off, we're going to talk a little bit about our coming out stories on our sexual awakenings. How did we realize we weren't part of the heteronormative community and we were part of the LGBTQIA plus? Doug, do you want to go first on that?
Yeah, so the funny thing with me is even after my sort of initial realization, I didn't properly come out for like I don't think a couple of years after because I was never sure if I was gay enough to call myself bisexual. Uh so the initial realization had happened. I was just fresh off a breakup with a woman and I was out one night just, drinking and dancing as you do, living the single life. And I had met this really cute, sort of short-haired, androgynous-looking girl. We had been dancing, having a few drinks. It was great. And then when I asked her what her name was, he told me it was Finley. And it was just I get hit with a realization. I'm like, hey, I don't I don't care. Like he's still cute, I still, yeah. Nothing ever really came of that, but then that was sort of a journey of yeah, sort of realization after that point of like, hey, it's not like exceptions to the rule of me being straight. There are just a lot of really cute men out there. And so that's how I ended up where I am.
True. Leo, do you want to share a little bit of your story?
Yeah, sure. So I've had an interesting coming out journey. I'll keep it to the sexuality specific ones because I've actually come out a total of 4 times in my life. So we'll just keep it to the sexuality ones. So I didn't I had a similar thing where even after my initial realization, I didn't come out for several years afterwards. I think I realized that I was interested in women about 10 years old, just from honestly, I think it was from a cartoon. I think I just saw a really cute girl in a cartoon one time. I was like, oh no.
Oh, we've all been
That's a
there, yeah.
strange, yeah, that's a strange
Cartoons
feeling.
always get you. Sonic the
It
Hedgehog was
is.
one of my.
Shigo.
It wasn't Shigo, but it was a Shigo-esque kind of character.
All
I
right,
think it was
cool, cool, cool.
Asami from Legend of Korra was
All
mine.
right.
Fair.
Um, but yeah, I didn't come out as bisexual till about 15, 16. Um, uh, but even then was kind of didn't act on it very much for like a lot of my life until I went to university. Because I grew up in Hong Kong, which is not, it has a bit more conservative values than here, and the queer community is much, much smaller there and more concentrated. Whereas coming here, I was like, oh wow, I'm at drama school, everyone's gay. This is great. So I came out as at the time as a lesbian shortly after starting at drama school, just because I started dating girls and went, oh, this is so much better. This is what this is meant to feel like. Yeah, it was just interesting. Yeah, it just suddenly clicked in my brain of like, oh, this is how you're meant to feel when you're talking to someone and interested in what butterflies are meant to feel like. I didn't know that up till this point. That's fun. Yeah, so that's my story.
Amazing. So now it's interesting, obviously, now that you've transitioned, now you identify as a heterosexual male. So how did that feel, going from identifying as lesbian to now identifying as a heterosexual male? Is there more to that? I'm interested. I'm just interested to know.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. Well, I certainly feel like I'm a lot less cool now, because I was a non-binary lesbian and I'm just a straight white man. So I definitely, that was a depressing.
The worst.
I know. I was like, oh god, oh no, I've made a horrible mistake. No, but it was interesting. It didn't have a massive impact upon my attraction, though interestingly within my own actual dating experience, it's made it very different in terms of the fact that I feel a lot more confident, and it's a lot easier to, before I was like, girls can't talk to them, scary, and now that's still kind of the case, but less so. We're getting better.
Honestly, I relate to that so much. Like, since knowing I wasn't 100% straight, I want to fight every man, but cannot look another woman in the eye. You know,
yes.
women are just so intimidating.
Please put that on the shirt. I'll buy it.
I do like my funny slogan shirts, to be fair.
Yeah.
I've got another one that says "Call me Daddy," but it looks like Call of Duty.
Nice.
So I didn't realize that I was pansexual until one of my friends actually said to me, my friend Roxy, shout out if you're watching, Roxy. I was having a conversation with her. I was like, yeah, I'm straight, but I could sleep with any gender realistically. And she was like, babe, that's not straight. that's not what heterosexuality is. I was
it's kind of the opposite of what straight is.
Yeah. But because I've always been involved with men, and I've always been romantically involved with men, I've always only thought I could be romantically linked to men. Which is something we'll be discussing later, is your sexual orientation versus your romantic orientation. But she says to me, you sound more like a heteroromantic pansexual. And I was like, whatever that is, sure, let's go with that. So that's how I ended up finding out. Someone else told me that I wasn't straight, which was grand. But yeah, I think that's a good place to start. We're going to now go into a little bit on some misconceptions about sexuality. Not all of them. There's far too many to cover in the space of 45 minutes to an hour, so that's just not going to happen. Although we've only taken 9 minutes to do that, which is great. So first off, we're going to talk a little bit about what is the difference between gender and sexuality. Whenever I've had conversations with my elders, they tend to get the two confused, because there are many genders and there are many sexualities, and some people don't understand what it is when you're identifying as a gender versus where you're identifying as a sexuality. So do you guys want to just throw out what to you is gender and what to you is sexuality? How would you define it? We'll start with you, Leo, since we started with Doug last time.
Sure. It's one of those questions that feels so simple, but then you try and explain it and then you're like, oh, this is actually harder. It's easy to understand in my own brain, but hard to express. For me, gender comes down to it comes down to a view of self versus a view of the world. So gender is a thing where it's entirely about how, in my case, certainly, how I see myself and how I hope others see me. Whereas my sexuality is entirely about how I see others, and specifically how I see people, and how that works out within attraction, whether that be romantic, sexual, whatever it might be. So I think it's more of an internal versus external thing for me. It's interesting though, I've had very, very many similar conversations with older people in particular in my family, in particular recently. But yeah, it's interesting that I remember it was one of my aunts asked, "Oh, and how is sexuality now changed?" And all my other aunts and uncles went, "Hang on a second, no, but those are the same." What? How? That can't happen. And it was like, no, it can happen. It hasn't for me personally. God knows I haven't started tea yet, and apparently that can change things. But it was just a very interesting thing of all my aunts and uncles suddenly their minds being blown, going, "Oh, actually, these are two separate things, and you could be a trans man and be bisexual or be gay or be straight. They're not actually interlinked with one another." So yeah, similar conversation recently. But yeah, for me, it's how I view myself versus how I view other people within the world in relation to myself.
Yeah, Doug?
Yeah, I mean, you pretty much hit the nail on the head. It's like, honestly, I have a much less, I guess, considered view on gender because, being cisgender, it's never something I've really personally had to think about too much. But yeah, gender to me has always just been like what you are. Meanwhile, sexuality is, it's to do with who your preferred partners are, it's like, yeah, it's I wish I had like a really thoughtful, cool answer, but it's just like, you know, gender's who I am and sexuality is who I like. I never really thought that there could be much overlap between that.
Yeah. I think it's interesting because I think a lot of the confusion in the conversations that I've had has come with as we kind of begin to understand more about gender and we begin to recognize more things on the spectrum of gender. I think certainly from having conversations with generally older straight cis people, it's always trying to consider in relation to themselves how someone else's gender affects their own sexuality. Like, oh, wait, I'm attracted to this person, but apparently this person identifies as non-binary. What does that mean about me? Yeah. And then sends them into a little cishet panic, which is quite entertaining for me, if I'm entirely honest. Yeah. Yeah, I think it's interesting, but it is because that sexuality is related to who you're attracted to. So whenever I think someone else's gender isn't what you think it is, or it's maybe not as linear or as binary, I think a lot of people then bring it back to themselves and go, oh God, what does that make me then? What does that, if this person is this, what does that make me? And I think that's where a lot of people, get the confusion from, but also in some cases get the fear of it from.
Yeah. I completely agree. I was going to say exactly the same as what you were saying, Doug. Like gender is who I am and sexuality is who I like. But I know that there's a lot of confusion with the older generation. I'm not going to mention which family member said this, but we very much have many conversations. A lot of the time, it's because this person likes to wind me up because he knows I'm very lefty and very liberal. But he will say things like, I don't understand all these genders. Like, you know what? I'm just going to identify as a Black lesbian. I'm like, well, Dad, that's a race and a sexuality. I just said who it was. That's fine. That's a race and a sexuality. That's not the same thing. And he was like, but isn't it? And I'm like, no. But he does a lot of it is just because he likes to. He enjoys a good wind up. I know there are some people who genuinely like get confused about the difference between what they are.
Just the old attack helicopter joke.
That's literally what I was about to say. That's literally I identify as an attack helicopter. Shut the fuck up.
That was so funny and edgy 20 years ago.
Yeah, and the other one that I quite like is when they say, well, I identify as a toaster, and I'm like, well, don't go in a bathtub then, because that's not going to work out well for you.
Also, I always just find it really funny because those kind of somehow it always ends up being dudes. I have these conversations with like old straight cis white dudes. But whenever they're like, pronouns don't matter. Like I don't care about people's pronouns. They're stupid. Pronouns are stupid. You try misgendering one of them. Shit's hilarious. I used to do it back when I worked at pub. If they started chatting like this, I was like, oh, so she said she wants a cider, and they go, you what? I'm like, You see, pronouns do matter because now you're offended because I called you she. Like, they do matter. Shut up.
Yeah. Exactly. No, I definitely agree. So that's kind of a little bit about gender versus sexuality and the differences there. We're now going to go on to two sexualities that I think people often get confused, as there is a lot of overlap, but there's also some differences between them. Is bisexuality and pansexuality. Now, according to a website minus18.org, the main difference between bisexuality and pansexuality is bisexuality means that you're attracted to the gender the same as your own and to other genders, attracted to two or more genders. So gender is still a factor in your preferences. Whereas pansexuality is more about being attracted to all genders. Gender isn't as big a factor in who they like. It's not to say that gender is the ultimate factor. It's just according to this website, bisexuals still have a preference towards certain genders, which is fine. You like who you like and you don't like who you don't like. But how do you guys feel? I know, Doug, you said that you're bisexual and I am a pansexual woman. How do you feel about, do you see a big difference between the two? Do you think they're so similar they might as well just be one? How do you feel about it?
Yeah, like I don't. It's a weird thing, like the difference between them. It seems kind of nebulous. I always just went with bisexual because again, like I said, my initial struggle was not even knowing if I was gay enough to not just call myself straight.
Mhm.
So for me, that just always felt like the label that fit best. So to me, it becomes less about trying to define it and more just
Mhm.
how does it feel? Is it natural? Do you
Yeah.
feel like that's more descriptive of what you are?
Mhm.
Because yeah, for me, it's like I like men, I love women. You know,
Yeah.
never really put too much more thought into it than that. You kind of just go with who you want to go with.
Mhm. Yeah, I agree. I mean, I've always seen it as, I am ready to be with a person irrespective of gender. I've always been scared about being romantic with someone who's not a man because I've never known anything else.
Yeah.
But I am still open to the idea of being with someone romantically who is not just a straight white man, because that seems to straight white toxic man, sorry, that seems to be my preference. Leo, what about you? Were you ever confused about like the whole bisexuality, pansexuality, what the differences were, if there were differences?
Yeah, I remember hanging out with a guy, I think hilariously, I think it's when I started identifying as bisexual and therefore we were on a date, but instead we just ended up chatting and being mates instead. We went out and at the time I identified as bisexual and he identified as pansexual. And so we had a really, really long discussion about it. And basically it was kind of similar to what you were saying, like from the actual definition, was that his thought process was for him, gender was not a factor. Gender was not an important thing. It was just like that if there's a person and I'm attracted to the person, then I'm attracted to the person, and that's just the end of that conversation. Whereas my understanding of bisexuality, from having spoken to bisexual friends, was more about gender can absolutely play a factor in that. Again, it's just kind of it tends to be one or more genders. So I know, for example, there are people who I have as friends who are bisexual who are attracted to men and women. I know people who identify as bisexual because they're attracted to women and non-binary people. It just kind of, so gender is still very much a thing that you see and is taken into consideration. And even if it's like anyone, it's still that gender is a factor, I think, in your brain. If gender is still a factor within your attraction, that tends to be my interpretation from having spoken to friends of bisexuality versus pansexuality. Is just about gender doesn't matter. It's just regardless of gender, am I attracted to this person?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Just this person, this beautiful specimen of the
exactly
right in front of me.
Don't know what gender they are, but they're pretty. So
yeah. Yeah, 100%. Yeah, because I think because apart from the whole like gender is a factor and gender is not a factor, I don't think there's much else that is different between bisexuality and pansexuality. You know, it's about being fine with more than one, either all or a few. So I think there tends to be a lot of crossover. I think there's a lot of switch between as well. You know, I think people go back and forth between bisexuality and pansexuality. You know, if especially if they're exploring. And they're like, you know, I definitely have a preference, and then they explore more, and they're maybe like, actually, I don't have much of a preference. Maybe I am more pansexual. But I've always found it quite interesting to think about, because usually people say to me when I tell them that I'm pansexual, they're like, so what does that mean? Is that like bisexual? And I'm like,
I know.
There's the other fantastic joke also from 20 years ago that's, so you like cooking pots? It's just...
No, because I have to clean them up afterwards. So
fair.
Don't do the washing. So that's just a little bit on bisexuality and pansexuality. I do have a message from one of my close friends who identifies as asexual. And she wanted me to share a couple of misconceptions that she wanted to be dispelled. I'm going to have to open my phone for this. Please wait. Please hold. So my friend Hannah, we have been friends for a few years. We did college and university together, and I've always been interested in asexuality and what that means for a person, aromantic and asexuality, because it's something that I've heard about, but I've never 100% understood, because, you know, I've been quite hypersexual throughout my life, and I knew that asexuality was a thing, but for me it was, don't like nothing, don't want nobody to touch me, I'm not interested in that whatsoever. Which I think is a common misconception about asexuality, is that they're just like these sexless beings that don't want anything to do with anything. So she wanted me to bring up that two main areas that come up for her are, is asexuality always equals having no libido, which is not true. They still have a libido, it's just they don't, you know, place it in ways that we do, and that they're not interested in any sort of relationships, which is also not true. Hannah has had many relationships. She just prefers having more of like still romantic, but not going all the way. She still enjoys having a partner, having company, but she just views being in a relationship differently to society nowadays. What was your guys' view on asexuality? Obviously, none of us are asexual. I do want to preface that. This is just coming from a friend who did want to put forward some misconceptions that she wanted to speak about. She couldn't be here today, unfortunately. She's not well. But she wanted me to just kind of put that over. So what do you guys know of asexuality, romanticism, etc.? And has your view of it changed over the years now that we kind of know more about it?
Yeah, I've sort of gained more of a sort of nuanced view of it. You know, I've, you know, met and talked to a few asexual people. Just never been anything, again, really, that I've had to think I'm shit at this. Like we're doing all these insights on sexuality, and I'm like, man, you know, it's like
I'm just here,
people are
guys.
pretty.
I'm
Yeah.
just existing in the world, having a good time.
Yeah.
I'm here and I'm just fucking, you know.
Sexuality depends what I've been drinking that night.
Yeah.
Oh God. Yeah, I think it's interesting though, because I think definitely, I think having those I think just in general with anything to do with sexuality, having those conversations with people is so important, because it just provides so much insight. And I think the biggest insight for me was understanding the difference between sexual preference and romantic preference. So the difference between, in this case, being asexual and aromantic, and having that separation in my brain. I think that was the biggest thing that's changed for me from like initially whenever I first heard about asexuality, 15, 16, whatever it was. But yeah, because I remember speaking with a friend who is asexual, but who has a long-term partner. And I was like, how'd that work? What? Because in my brain, for me, sexuality and romantic attraction are linked in my own feelings and my own attraction. But it was really interesting having this conversation with her, going, no, I'm still very much interested in having a partner and, you know, being someone, having that companionship and potentially even, having a family or something one day. But the sexual side, that kind of need, that want, just that's not the same thing. These are two separate things. And it was just interesting because I don't think I'd ever been able to separate those out of my head before. And it was also interesting because it just made me think a lot more about my own sexual attraction and romantic attraction, and try and kind of, as much as they are kind of somewhat linked to each other, try and be able to separate those out in my own view. So it was a very interesting conversation. I think it's a very important distinction to make, that not all asexual people are like, don't come near me, I don't want to be near anyone. It's just, it's very different to what to be romantically involved with someone versus sexually involved with someone.
Yeah, and I mean, that's a perfect segue onto the next topic, which we were going to speak about, which was the difference between sexual orientation and romantic orientation. I know, straight.
No, I'm just great at this.
Yeah, you know what? You can.
I definitely did that on purpose. That was definitely planned. That's exactly what I meant to do.
100%. I mean, we could definitely discuss asexuality more. It would be wonderful to have someone who was of that sexual orientation to be able to speak about it more. So obviously we don't want to discuss too in depth, just kind of a little bit there to put forward another type of sexuality that we have. We don't have time for all of them because there is many, but yes, sexual orientation versus romantic orientation. What are the differences? Now, I did mention earlier that I was sort of a heteroromantic pansexual, which basically to me means I could have sex with anyone, but I've only ever felt romantically connected with men, which is unfortunate because I can't stand them most of the time. But I've only ever been able to romantically connect to men. So therefore, that's why a lot of me thought I was straight, because I could only be like, oh, I would be in a relationship with this person who is a man. I couldn't be in a relationship with anyone else. But the further along I've gotten, the more I've kind of been like, okay, maybe I'm still heteroromantic, but I'm still open to the idea of being romantically connected with someone else. It's just I haven't found that person. So I when I realized that I was pansexual, also at the same time realized about the difference between romance and romantic orientation and sexual orientation, and how they're not always interconnected. Leo, as you were saying, yours have been pretty interconnected. Doug, what about you?
Oh yeah, that's it's pretty much always been inextricably linked. In my experience, I've always been like, very like a sex important person. And I feel like, that has some stigma of it. That like brings images of like, the Barney Stinson type. But it's just like, for me, that is very much linked to my romantic attraction, and that's the most sort of effective and sort of honest way I have in my own sort of person of expressing that as well. It is, it's like, to me, to me personally, they're pretty much the same thing.
Okay.
It's
always just made sense for you, kind of like I'm sexually attracted to this people and also romantically attracted to the same people. Like, it's not really been much of a switch up.
Pretty much, yeah. And it's like, I find a lot of the time, it's like, if I can't be romantically attracted to someone, any sexual attraction that was there in the first place goes away. Like, if I find someone attractive first and then find out I don't like them, the sexual attraction goes away. Like, that's very much linked.
Okay.
But yeah, I've had it sort of the opposite as well, where, I do, really get close to someone, and if for whatever reason, they haven't been sort of comfortable with that. It's not something that was ever a deal breaker for me. I've very much been able, in the past, talking to them, either taking it slow, or in a couple of cases of people I've seen who were having their own personal issues, for one reason or another, it just never happened. And that was never anything that, I held against them. That was never anything that I would push for.
Mm-hmm.
Just to me personally, like I said, that's how I express that romantic sort of attraction. So if that's out the question, you find other ways.
Yeah, fair enough. Leo, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, I think just to kind of build off of Doug's point. Yeah, I think it's because I think also I know that I also know a few people who are in relationships with asexual people who are themselves not asexual is another thing. Like, it doesn't mean like I'm asexual and therefore I can only date other asexuals. That's not necessarily how it works. It's all about kind of communication, and every person who's asexual will have, different exact things of like where the boundaries are, what they don't like, what they're comfortable with, what they're not. And that's just the thing that you work out within like your own relationship. I've never dated anyone asexual, so I can't speak on that for myself, but just from speaking to friends about it. But I think it is interesting. I think, because I think that interconnection of romantic and sexual attraction, I'm very much the same, where they're kind of inextricably linked from one another. And but I also think it's interesting what you were saying, Zoe, about being open to other like being romantically attracted to someone else, but only ever having been romantically attracted to men. Because I remember when I was when I identified as bisexual, it's because I could never see myself being with a woman long term, like marrying a woman, having children with a woman, because that was not the picture that was provided for me by the world, by my family, by whatever media, etc. And as soon as I'd kind of done the work to get through that, I literally remember, because it was while I had COVID, so I was just sat in my room doing nothing, and I was just ruminating on this, as you do when you're stuck in your room and you have COVID, and kind of had the click of like, oh, actually, no, I can see how that would work. I can see how I would have relationship with a woman, and that suddenly made sense to me. It was in that moment where I went, oh, I'm not attracted to men. Cool, that's good to know. It was literally that same moment where I went, oh, that's what I want. Interesting. But it's interesting how like what society expects you to do can mold you so much that even the thing that would feel most natural is something that you push away so much, because that wasn't until when I was 20 years old. So I
love societal norms.
We love a good societal norm.
Great societal norm. Yeah, I mean, I think I very much relate to the whole, what was the picture perfect thing for my future, and it was, settle there and have a kid, have a husband, etc. Because that's all like just quote unquote normal. And it wasn't until I was 25, I think. 27 now, so 24, 25 is when I kind of realized the whole pansexual thing, and then it made me kind of realize more that I don't have to go down that route, even though it's what I've always imagined. Like, it's my romantic attraction to men because of my view of this is what I'm supposed to be. Like, I've always felt like, I've always felt like a cisgendered straight woman, so therefore my path in life is supposed to be settled down with a man. So that's why I'm always attracted to men. I'm supposed to be attracted to men and romantically linked to them. But being more open to the thought now, I think it still just scares me, because I haven't found the right person to kind of explore that with. So therefore I don't feel I can say I'm fully pansexual. It's always been, because I've always been able to kind of separate sex and romance, but because trauma, it's always that.
We love a good bit of trauma.
We do. So I've always been able to like have sexual relations with people and kind of like have that in a box and that's over there, and that I don't need that to have the romantic link. And it's the same, I don't have to have a romantic link to have a sexual link with someone. I can just do that part. However, I am completely flipped now, where I don't feel like I could be sexual with anyone unless I had a romantic link with them.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah, I that came with, you know, a few years of celibacy. And I am at the point now where I don't separate them as much. There is more of an interlinked connection there. So I do sometimes wonder, you know, could I be fully pansexual and could I have this romantic link with someone if I still feel like I can have sexual relations with all genders? Does that mean I can then have relationships with all genders? But I haven't been able to explore that yet. So that's something I'm still trying to feel out. But also, I don't have time for any of that. I've got other things.
I've got life to do. I've got shit I need to get done. I don't have time.
I have a kid. I don't need another one that's an adult too. So yeah, I think it's super interesting, because I think that's one thing that people forget is like there can be a difference between your sexual orientation and your romantic orientation. Most of the time, it doesn't happen. Most of the time,
it definitely can.
It definitely can, and I didn't know it was a thing until I realized, until Roxy told me. But speaking about like kind of this toing and froing, I think one of the burning questions that I constantly have, and I like to discuss with a lot of my friends, is sexuality fluid? Because we always have this, you know, like if you're homosexual, you have this criteria. If you're heterosexual, you have this criteria. If you're pansexual, you have this criteria. Is there room for flowing between? And if you do flow, does this mean you can't identify as that sexuality? Or does this mean you are still that sexuality? But, you know, sometimes you can like sneak further into the pick and mix box and just see what there is at the...
I love that, the pick and mix box of sexuality.
Yeah, like
that's the best way to describe it. Pick and mix.
I feel like that's why I am, and just like pick and mix. So yeah, what do you guys think? Do you think is there room to flow with sexuality nowadays? Is sexual fluidity a thing, or it's you're one and done? You're what you are, and that's it. Leo, I'll start with you because I can see Doug
deep in thought. Deep in thought.
Yeah.
I absolutely think that sexuality can be fluid. And I would say that because this is something I've thought about a lot recently, where I think I've always had a preference for women now in retrospect, but I also can absolutely say with complete and utter certainty that both my sexual attraction and my romantic attraction have been fluid, because there are men who I have been sexually attracted to, and every once in a while, occasionally still am. I'm like, oh, he's very attractive. Do I want to be him or do I want to be with him? I'm not sure. It's always the question. I like those abs. Do I want them or do I want them on me? I don't know.
Or do I want to lick?
Do I want to lick them? I don't know. We'll figure it out later.
What do we do?
Again, one of the reasons why I'm very interested to start tea, because Lord God knows I might come back and be like, guess who's bisexual again now? But certainly at the moment, I definitely feel that I am far more hetero-romantic, but I've also been in one serious relationship with a man where I will have to say I was sexually attracted to him. I was completely in love with him. I cannot fathom the idea of being in a relationship with a man at this point, but I'm also very open to the fact that, again, in particular, both with just time and experience, but also in particular with going on hormones shortly, hopefully in the next month, that could change. I think it's absolutely something that could change throughout your life, because you have more time to get to know yourself, and also just sometimes it's a period of your life where this thing works and then you go, actually, this doesn't fit who I am anymore. I've changed fundamentally as a person, and this is just another part of who you are as a person at the end of the day. It's not something that's like, this is what you are and now you'll be this for the rest of the time. It's something that can just change throughout your life and change in different chapters of your life. And I think that's fine. I also don't think that that gives anyone the right to gatekeep queerness or labels from people, because that's the thing that constantly frustrates me, is the idea that a lot of people, in particular, I would say largely from my own group of friends, is largely queer women. My friends who are bisexual, who then start kind of going, oh, actually, I think I might maybe be a lesbian. The way that that gets gatekept sometimes, or the way that even people who are bisexual will go to queer things, then be told, no, you're not queer enough to be here. That it doesn't give you the right to gatekeep. Sexuality is a fluid thing. Doesn't matter if someone was tried something out and then wasn't for them. Don't gatekeep the labels. It's weird. It's just stupid.
Yeah.
That's my little rant over.
I remember when I was younger, one of my friends came out to me and she says, oh, I think I might be gay. And I was like, okay, but could you just have sex with them, or can you imagine a future with them? Like, because that's the difference. Me being my all knowing, and she was like, you might be right. Maybe it's just like I could have sex with them and not full lesbian. She is a full lesbian now. Confirmed.
Carabiner.
Yeah.
She's got cuffed jeans. She's got the beanie. The plaid shirt, it's all there.
I do remember saying that, and every time I look back on it now, I was like, who the fuck did I think I was? Like the queen of the lesbians, all knowing? No, I wasn't even one myself, you know what I mean? I was just like, no, it's only if you can see yourself romantically with them that it counts.
But you think when you're that young and you start learning about this stuff and you know a little bit more than anyone else, you think you know everything, and then you get older, you're like, I know fucking nothing.
Nothing.
I know.
Have you managed to have a little think about what you wanted to say?
Oh God.
Go on, mate. Spit some bars.
I've never seen so much fear in a man's eyes unless I was talking to a man in the bar and shouting at him. That's the only other time I've seen that fear.
Oh man, you remember that too?
No.
And that's why it was scary, because she doesn't remember it.
Oh. You're lucky it was only shouting.
Oh man, well, short answer, yes, sexuality is absolutely fluid. I mean, people feel different about themselves and about everyone else every day. I mean, in my experience, yeah, coming back to the am I gay enough thing, there have been like periods of time in my life where I've gone out and basically only been thinking about, men. Like, just that's what I wanted at the time. And it's like right now, today, couldn't do it, obviously, like, depending on the man, but like in general, think about it, and I'm just like, I don't feel it. So yeah, it's like it changes on a dime for definitely me, and I'm assuming a lot of other people too, who they probably don't want to admit that because they're worried about gatekeepers taking their gay card away.
Because as we all know, when you come out, you get a gay card that validates you, and you have to present it at any queer event and to other gays.
And
I got mine in the post in a rainbow envelope.
Yeah, it's like
very nice.
As a bisexual, for everyone of the opposite sex that you sleep with, you have to get with someone of the same sex, otherwise you get a point on your license and it just gets taken away after 3 strikes. Like, just too many women, straight.
I mean, by that standard, I'm a gay man, so I need to fix the points on my license. I need to put in some graft.
I just don't have any points on my license in the last 4 or 5 years, so none at all. Just haven't wanted to. I suppose that's the thing as well. Like, years ago, I was super hypersexual, you know. I was like, out every weekend, I was like, right, which one you? But see now, see, even the thought of like a guy kissing my cheek, I'm like, get away from me! Don't touch me! Don't even look in my general direction. I don't want nothing to do with you.
So that's another way it's fluid. Yeah.
Yeah, even in that way, it's fluid. Like you can go from being like, yeah, let's do it all the time, to being like, if anyone even so much as breathes next to me, I'm swinging. And I don't mean a swingers club. That's not what
I was about to say. I was like,
no,
okay.
not that kind of
I mean, you do whatever you want to. So it's a free country.
If I was in those parties, I wouldn't be doing me. But I am. You do you, boo. Yes. I definitely agree that sexuality is completely fluid. You know, you're not the same person you were 10 years ago in so many different aspects.
Yeah.
You know, you're going to have some things that are the same, but you're not the same person. Like, I'm not the same person I was at 17. No chance.
God, no. I was a little femme girl running around in crop tops and dresses. I don't know who she is. I don't know her.
Alcoholic.
I wasn't at 17.
Yeah, I'm from Peterhead, so that was just normal there. So who I was then is not who I am now. So if that can mold and flow, then so can my sexuality, so can my preferences, so can my opinions and my thoughts and my beliefs. You know, everything you are as a person can flow and is fluid. Sometimes it's shaped by other people and who you're around, of course, and sometimes it's shaped by having to mirror other people because you don't know how to actually function as a real human being. But it flows and it is fluid. That's my opinion on it anyway. Other people can disagree and be wrong, but
what does your shirt say again? For the sake of
right, for having great tits and correct opinions.
There we go.
Thanks, Funky Panther. That's who did it for me. But yeah, do you guys have anything else to add on that area? Anything else you want to kind of bring up with it?
I think the only other thing to bring up is it's also fine if your sexuality has been the same your entire, like, because I know some people who are like born now, they were like, I like girls. They decided this at 4 and it's still true. And I'm like, great, good for you.
Yeah.
Brilliant. But some people it's just the fuck, I don't know.
Yeah, it's like an ocean.
It's like an ocean.
Nothing but respect for people who've had it figured out from day one.
Yeah. I know, mate.
Honestly,
what I give.
But also fuck those people.
Actually, I'll say that. I mean, if you looked at me at like the age of like 5 or 6, it was so blindingly obvious that I was a boy and I like girls. It just somehow me and no one else clocked. It was so blindingly obvious. All I wanted to do was play with Nerf guns and like run around chasing girls. That was it. Yeah, there were signs. There were signs.
Oh my god, yeah. When I was like growing up, like as a little straight boy, the amount of I'm straight but I would. It's like, if that list is more than one, you're bi. Like
yeah.
I think I did have a few of those actually. Like I'm totally straight, but Ruby Rose, yes.
Well, that one's a freebie. That
one's a freebie. It doesn't matter who you are, what sexuality you are. If you look at Ruby Rose,
For me, it's like from the age of bloody 7, like Superman Returns came out that year, and I was like, I'm straight, but Brandon Routh.
Fair. My big one was Rihanna. I was like, I'm definitely straight, but Rihanna looks like a goddess, and I don't know what to do about it. Yeah. And I still hold that opinion.
Jessica Rabbit was one for me as well.
Yeah.
She's such a cliche one too. It's like, okay, and
I know we've already mentioned her, but also Shigo. I know she's come up once already, but Shigo, yeah.
100%. And you know what? I think everyone talks about this movie, but one of the best movies for people that are attracted to more than one gender, The Mummy.
Oh, we've all seen that one, yeah.
Yeah.
My mom has made me watch that one so many times. And I'm, Mom, are you?
Are you? Do we need to have a conversation?
Like, I would absolutely do anything with anyone. Maybe not Benny from the first movie. I'd maybe have a pass on Benny. He's a little bit too chaotic and cowardly for me. But Imhotep could get it. Absolutely. Yeah. Even as his mummy self before he before
Oh.
he's back to being normal.
I've never heard that opinion. I've never heard that one. That's a new
But
one.
it's because I know what's coming afterwards, so it's like, you know.
Yeah, but the first time you watched it, did you look at it and go,
No, I
Yeah,
was too,
I
I
would.
was too busy looking at Brendan Fraser
Oh, fair. That's, yeah.
and Rachel
To be
Weisz.
fair, on the subject of like incredibly bisexual movies, for me, fucking La La Land.
Oh,
Fair.
yeah.
There was
Emma Stone
that
and Ryan
scene.
Gosling?
Yeah, there was that scene where Ryan Gosling's just like impassionedly explaining why he loves jazz so much, and Emma Stone's just like, staring at him with all googly eyes. I'm like, I don't know which one of them I want to be.
Mhm.
I want to replace someone at that table.
I want to be a
Like,
sandwich in the middle of them.
I'm like, I want a woman to look at me like that, or I want a guy that I can look at like that.
One of the more recent ones for me, it was definitely The Witcher.
The Witcher.
Don't get me started.
Mate, again,
somewhere.
Henry Cavill in the wig, all dirtied up.
Henry Cavill in The Witcher. Even I looked at him, I was like, I think I want to be him. But if he tried it on with me, I don't know what my answer would be. I don't know.
Bathtub scene.
That's the one that's on my watch, babe. Like that. Yeah, that was definitely one of the more recent ones. And I think another TV series that definitely helped was Buffy the Vampire Slayer.
Oh yeah.
Buffy
and Spike.
But yes, that's a sandwich I'd like to be between is Buffy and Spike. 100%. That is another sandwich I will have any day of the week on repeat. It will be my comfort food, actually. I'll have it all the time. That is definitely another one. I love how we've gone from sexual fluidity being like, hey guys, all these movies and TV shows.
Just go watch
don't
the
know
movies.
how you feel. Watch them and you'll know.
Watch them, yeah.
Yeah, Spike's always been one for me. Always. I got to meet him. I got to meet James Marsters a couple of years ago at Comic-Con. It was great. He told me I had a beautiful smile, and I was like, no one can tell me anymore that I'm unattractive ever again, even myself, because James Marsters told me I have a nice smile, and therefore Spike found me attractive. So done.
Done. It peaked. That was the moment. That was
like
the peak.
That man worked for like 6 years with Sarah Michelle Gellar. He knows what attractive is. Like,
I was about to say he knows what attractive looks like.
Yeah.
She is a beautiful woman. I have my Buffy tattoo somewhere, but she's hidden at the moment.
Just everyone in that show was so pretty.
I know. Willow, Tara.
Right.
We don't talk about Xander. We don't talk about Xander. My son's namesake, Riley, although he was the most boring.
Yes.
But he's very attractive.
Oh yeah, butter on white bread, but like he's like,
you know, it'd be fun for like a one-time thing at least.
I'd give him a week.
Yeah, I wouldn't talk to him, but a week's okay.
You wouldn't need to be talking. You wouldn't need to be talking.
No. But anyways, we've totally gotten off track. Is there any final words you guys want to give to our viewers?
If Ryan Gosling's out there, just hit me up. You know where to find me.
Yeah.
And Emma Stone, if you're watching, hit me up.
And Henry Cavill, James Marsters, Sarah Michelle Gellar, Rachel Weisz, Brendan Fraser. You know what? Just any you're watching, hit me up.
Just hit us up.
Anyone who we've named today.
Yeah.
Yeah. Even my friend Roxy. You know what? Hit me up, Roxy. That's great. Thanks so much for joining us, guys. Leo and Doug, you've been fantastic guests. I really appreciate having you, and I'm glad we could end it, on a bit of a laugh. Next week we are going to be talking about free speech versus hate speech. People enjoy saying things and using the excuse of free speech, but when does that spill over into actually being hate speech is what we're going to be discussing next week. We have a few things to plug. So Diva, the musical extravaganza, will be held on the 15th and 16th of June in the Arches in Putney. And Queer Cabaret will be held on the 20th of June at the exact same place. Make sure to check our Instagram, Car Crash Productions, I'll get to you, at Car Crash Productions daily for all the Pride goodness, including cast announcements of those previously mentioned things, and sing your Pride videos. That's all the plugs I have. Anyone else got some plugs they want to share?
I have a brief plug for the same festival, separate company, though run also by someone who works on Car Crash, Tom. Myself and Tom have a company called Shakespeare. We are doing our debut show at the Wandsworth Fringe this coming weekend, so the 8th and 9th. Shows are at 9:30 till 11. We are doing a version of Midsummer Night's Dream called A Midsummer Night's Rave. So if you're feeling very ravey and in the mood for some Shakespeare and some dancing, yeah, come along.
Doug, anything to plug? No butt plugs, please. Not here.
Why'd you pick me to do that joke? Come on now.
You were the last
God.
one. It's always the last hole people choose.
No, there's a couple of things that I'm working on, but nothing that I'm can announce publicly yet.
Ooh, mysterious.
So watch this space, guys. That's what Doug's saying. Well, thanks very much, guys. We're gonna end it here. We've had a wonderful evening with you, and I hope you guys have enjoyed it as well. I need to figure out how to actually end this. But thanks very much, guys. We'll see you later.
Cheers.
We're still
We're still going.
We're still here. We are still.